So I decided to build a PC. Now, this video is just going to be talking about the parts I've chosen to build the PC that I'm building and why I chose them. But before we get into that, let's talk about the PC I have now. So the PC I have now, I've had for a couple years. It's a Dell XPS computer, which you've probably known if you've been following this channel for a while, since I have covered it before. It has an i7-4790 processor, which is the main reason I'm upgrading. It's a 3-generation old Intel processor. And so this is basically a platform upgrade. We're upgrading to a new platform, a new CPU, but we'll get to that. I kind of want to keep that a secret till the end, just as a surprise. What did I choose for a CPU? I'm sure you can probably guess it. Very popular new platform that's come out. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the other parts and why I chose them. Then eventually we'll get into our platform and our CPU, and we'll talk about those as well. Now, this case, as I'm sure people familiar with computer parts already know, is a fractal design Define R5. Here we have the white with the window. White, because as you will soon find out, that is the theme of this build, black and white. And window, obviously, so you can see the internals of the system once it is completed. Now, I picked the Define R5 for a few reasons. First, it is a pretty reasonably priced case for being a full-size tower case and having a window. It also has a lot of features, as well as a lot of modularity. So there's a lot of room for cooling, which will be nice, although I might not utilize it fully. And also another big plus is that it has sound dampening. So if you were to take off the inside, or take off this case panel, look on the inside, or the same case panel on the other side, you would see sound dampening foam on the inside. And that is really useful because that means that if this thing is chugging away rendering and it's running the fans really hard, especially the GPU or the CPU fan, that sound will be restricted. So if I'm, say, recording voiceovers in the same room, there won't be as much background noise. Not to mention just having a quieter case is just nicer to listen to in general. So the main choices for this case were the affordability, the modularity, and then the sound dampening. So now let's get in and jump into the next thing and talk about the power supply that I chose. Again, pretty unexciting, but I don't want to pull out the motherboard and spoil what platform I chose. We're going to save that to the end, so let's get the boring stuff out of the way. This is pretty simple. It's a EVGA 550 watt G2 power supply. Nothing too fancy here. Supernova series, it's a very reliable brand. They have very good efficiency ratings, very good reliability. It's also a modular power supply, which means if I choose to do some cable mods in the future, get some braided cables or anything like that, I'll be able to switch those out with this power supply. But other than that, there's not too much there. 550 watts, good amount, enough for me to upgrade in the future. It's only like an $80 power supply, which is great. EVGA, reliable brand, 80 plus gold certified. Not too much exciting there, just a very reliable power supply that can provide more than enough power for the system that I'm building. So now that we've talked about the power supply, let's talk about the RAM. So the RAM here, this is Trident Z. This is 32 gigabytes of RAM, two 16 gigabyte sticks of DDR4. Obviously we're moving to a brand new platform. We have to move from DDR3 to DDR4 memory, so it's all new memory. Double the memory I have now, which will be very helpful for rendering in After Effects, especially working with 4K stuff in After Effects. Having more RAM will allow me to lengthen the amount of render time that I have, RAM preview in After Effects, which is very useful when working with high resolution files in After Effects for things like compositing, motion graphics, that sort of thing. Alright, we're getting a little closer to having to reveal the platform and the CPU we chose, but I can reveal one more thing before I give it all away, and that is the CPU cooler. So this is another EVGA product. This is the EVGA CLC120. This is a closed loop all-in-one CPU air cooler. Nothing too exciting, just a 120mm rad, so nothing amazing. But it'll just be a little bit better cooling, a little bit quieter than just a typical fan cooler. Not to mention, it has LED lighting, RGB LED lighting. I don't think I'll be taking too much advantage of that. If anything, I'll probably just have it on white, but that is there as well. It's, again, a very inexpensive, very high quality, practical air cooler, water cooler. So if you're just diving in and you want something very simple to get into water cooling your system, this seems to be the way to go. So this is the way I went. Entry level, very simple water cooler. This should give me a little bit more overclocking headroom on my CPU, as well as just keep things very cool compared to a typical air cooler. Now, before we reveal the motherboard, which will basically give away the secret of the system that I've been drawing out, let's talk about the storage and GPU setup. So first of all, the GPU will be coming from my current system, which is a 4GB GTX 960 EVGA as well. I have a lot of EVGA parts, but they're a very good company, so no complaints there. But I'll be using that current GPU, which isn't a super powerful GPU, but it served me very well, and I'll probably be looking to upgrade that sometime next year. But for now, it's only a generation old. It's a pretty mid-level GPU, so I'm very happy with it. And we're going to keep that. For storage, we'll also be keeping the same storage setup I have currently. That includes a 960GB SSD, SanDisk SSD, a 1TB secondary storage drive, and then a 3TB external drive. So all that will be transferring over. In addition, at some point, probably within the next couple months, I'll be adding a probably 128GB M.2 SSD to this system. And that will be used for cache for Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro and After Effects and those programs like to cache a lot of stuff. And so having a very, very fast cache drive can be very useful. And I've seen a lot of data that seems to support there are pretty big performance improvements for having very fast cache drives, such as an M.2 drive or an NVMe drive. So I'll be looking to upgrade that probably within the next few months or so. But now it is time to basically give away what this system is, and I'm sure this is no surprise. But my motherboard here is the ASRock X370, and of course you will notice that it is an AM4 socket, which gives away that this is a Ryzen build. I don't think it should come as too much of a surprise for low to mid-level content creators. My light just went out. Well, it appears one of my light bulbs has gone out, but we'll continue with just a little bit less light. For low to mid-level content creators, Ryzen really has been the choice, and because they've done really but what I've been wanting Intel to do and asking Intel to do, but Intel has refused to do, and that is provide a 6 or 8 core consumer socket system, and they haven't done that. I would have been fine with a $400 6 core as long as it was on a non-X99 platform, because when you have an X99 platform, that super high-end professional platform, you're getting a lot of things like Thunderbolt support, a lot of proprietary systems, and you're paying for that. Most X99 or now X299 motherboards start at like $200 or very close to that, whereas this motherboard was only at $130, and this is still a very premium motherboard for the AM4 platform. So really the big advantage that AMD has provided is all of these cores for rendering purposes, and not just 8 cores. AMD has made plenty of very inexpensive 8-core CPUs before, but they had very poor single-threaded performance. But now AMD has provided an 8-core with very good single-threaded performance on a consumer hardware platform, which means less expensive motherboards, and that's really the main thing, less expensive motherboards, but also less expensive CPUs. And Intel has refused to give their consumer platforms anything more... Oh, hey, my light is back! Intel has refused to give their consumer platforms anything more than 4 cores, 8 threads with their now 7600K processor. So when AMD first announced a consumer 8-core 16-thread CPU, I was very skeptical because, of course, AMD doesn't have the greatest reputation with my generation when it comes to performance. They've always been in the shadow of Intel. But now they've kind of produced a pretty great platform and some pretty great CPUs at very affordable prices. And, having double the threads, double the cores, that's pretty big for content creation, especially things like 3D rendering, video editing, video rendering, those sorts of things. So it was a pretty obvious choice to move to AM4. Now, at first I was a little skeptical. I was thinking, let's wait for the second generation of Ryzen, whatever that may be called, to see how the platform matures. Because at the very beginning, you'll remember there was a lot of bugs, there was a lot of issues, especially a lot of motherboards and CPUs didn't have support for higher clocked RAM, for example. There was a lot of problems with that. A lot of other problems, some very concerning stuff. But at the end of the day, the platform has matured. It's been about 4 or 5 months since launch. The platform is very mature now. I wouldn't say very mature, but all of the kinks with this generation have been worked out, and with this chipset have been worked out for the most part. And I'm very happy with the performance that I've been seeing Ryzen CPUs produce. It's been very competitive, and it should definitely be a big upgrade from my 3-generation-old Core i7. So now, let's dive in and see specifically which CPU I chose. And that is the AMD Ryzen 1700X. It's 8 cores, 16 threads, very powerful CPU. Not their top-end 1800X, but it's still got plenty of performance, especially for something like this, especially compared to my current, again, 3-generation-old 4-core, 8-thread CPU. And it should be a very big performance bump, a very nice improvement compared to what I've been doing, and it should help a lot with moving to 4K video editing and that sort of thing. You know, being able to cut down my render times by 20 or 30% makes it a lot easier to justify deciding to shoot something in 4K as opposed to 1080p, because I've shot a lot of things in different resolutions. I haven't used 4K very much. I'm shooting this in 1080p, for example, but my cameras are capable of 4K, but I just haven't used it because I haven't felt comfortable with being able to have a quick turnaround. But with something like this, again, cutting my render times 20 or 30%, making playback much smoother with all these new cores and threads, that should improve the situation a lot easier and allow me to put out a lot more 4K content, which really is the goal of this, is to enable more 4K content, enable things like motion graphics, and just overall give me more options and more speed and power when it comes to video editing. So now this video was just a rundown of the parts. Basically, we're not going to be building anything in here, but in the next video we will be building this, putting this together. I'll probably just do a quick montage of that, and then we'll be covering benchmarks, comparing my current i7 4790 to the Ryzen 1700, and I'll probably also do some overclocking in that video as well. And eventually we'll probably be putting together like a cosmetics upgrade to this. Basically, I'll probably be getting a cable mod kit as well as some LED lighting, kind of pretty this up since we have this nice window on the case. So I'll be covering that as well. I haven't quite worked out how exactly I'm going to split up the videos, but there will be several more videos coming about this, and I'll definitely be covering the building of this, as well as the performance of this compared to my current system, now that we have double the cores, double the RAM, all that. So look forward to that in the future, but that is it for this video. So if you like this video, if you like hearing about the parts, you liked hearing my explanation of what parts I used, hit that like button. If you have any questions or comments about any of this stuff, perhaps something I didn't cover, why I chose it, why I chose something compared to another part, or just general computer building questions, feel free to leave those down in the comments section down below, or if you have any other comments about the build. And if you like this video, you want to see more like this, you want to see my actual build of this system, hit that subscribe button, and also hit that notification button if you want to be notified every time I upload a video.